Some people will leave you with nothing, certain you will stay broken forever. They walk away without looking back, without a single flicker of doubt crossing their faces. They assume the worst about you, because they never once stopped long enough to believe in your best. That is exactly what Marcus believed about Naomi, and it is exactly what his brother Deon believed, and his parents, Gerald and Evelyn, believed the very same thing. All of them together decided without saying it plainly that Naomi was not enough. They were wrong, but they would not find that out for a long time. The morning Marcus packed his bags, Naomi was sitting at the kitchen table with their 4-month-old son, Carter, wrapped gently against her chest in a pale muslin cloth. She had not slept more than 3 hours the night before. Her hair was pulled back loosely, and there were soft, tired circles beneath her eyes. She looked quiet. She looked worn down. And Marcus, standing at the doorway with 2 packed suitcases and his jacket already on, had decided that this exhausted, devoted woman with a baby on her chest was all she would ever be. "I need more than this, Naomi," he said quietly, in the careful tone of a man who believes he is the one being wronged. "I need a partner, not someone who disappears completely into motherhood." Naomi did not raise her voice. She did not cry. She looked at him steadily for a long, still moment. Then she looked down at Carter, who was sleeping peacefully against the warmth of her body, his tiny fingers curled loosely near his cheek. "Okay," she said. Just that one word, soft and certain, nothing more. Marcus left, and within the week the rest of them followed, not always in body, but fully in spirit. Deon, who had once been like a brother to her, stopped returning her calls and let the silence grow between them like something deliberate. Gerald and Evelyn, who had embraced her at their son's wedding and called her their own, now treated her like a chapter in a story that had already ended. She received a single message from Evelyn, brief and without warmth. "You should move back in with your own family. Naomi, you won't make it on your own in this city. It's too hard." There was no offer of help in those words. No reaching hand, only a quiet verdict delivered from a safe distance. Naomi read the message twice. Then she set her phone face down on the counter, listened to the soft sound of Carter breathing in the next room, and went to make his bottle. She did not fall apart that night. She did not fall apart the next night either. What she did slowly and without any announcement was begin. What none of them knew, what none of them had ever thought to ask about, was the small, steady company Naomi had been building quietly in the background for nearly 3 years. It was not a hobby. It was not something she did to pass the time or to feel useful in small ways. It was a real business built carefully in the hours, between Carter's naps, in the long dark stretches of nighttime, quiet when the rest of the house was still and she was the only one awake with her laptop and her plans. She had always carried a gift for understanding spaces. She knew how a room should breathe, how light should move through a window at different hours of the day, how a house could be arranged so that it felt not just beautiful but honest, like it belonged to the people living inside it. She had begun by consulting for small, residential developers on the outskirts of the city, then slightly larger ones, then companies that were building entire communities. She built her portfolio one project at a time, never rushing, never skipping steps, always delivering more than what was expected. Marcus had been vaguely aware that she worked on something in the evenings, but he had never asked much about it. He had assumed, without ever saying so, that it was something she did to feel occupied. He never once imagined that it was something growing. In the months after he left, without anyone to dismiss her ideas or pull her attention away from her purpose, Naomi moved faster. Carter slept in his little bouncer beside her desk while she took conference calls. She nursed him with one arm and scrolled through contractor bids with the other. She drove him to appointments in the back seat, while she listened to negotiations through her earbuds at red lights. She was tired in ways that lived deep in her bones, in ways that did not go away with one good night of sleep. But beneath that tiredness, she was also alive, quietly, stubbornly, genuinely alive in her work. 18 months after Marcus walked out that door with his 2 suitcases, Naomi's company closed its first major contract, development deal worth $12 million. She sat in her car in the parking garage afterward, hands still on the steering wheel, and cried. Not from sadness, from the pure, enormous weight of having done it without any of them. She bought a small house first. Nothing grand or showy, A safe neighborhood with good afternoon light and a yard where Carter could eventually run and fall and get back up again. She hired a part-time nanny so she could breathe between meetings. She kept her head down and she kept building. It was nearly 3 years later when the mansion was completed. It sat on a quiet, generous stretch of lakeside land on the edge of the city, a piece of land Naomi had driven past years ago with Marcus. Before Carter was born, before everything unraveled, she had pressed her face briefly toward the passenger window and said softly, almost to herself one day, "I'd love to build something there, right on that water." Marcus had glanced over and changed the subject without really responding, as if her words were a kind of harmless daydream and nothing more. She did not think about that moment often. But she thought about it the morning she signed the final deed. The home was everything she had ever allowed herself to imagine a house could be. 2 stories of pale cream stone with wide, generous windows that caught the light at every angle, arched doorways, a chandelier in the entry hall that scattered light across the ceiling like something from another world, a deep balcony on the upper floor that looked out over the still, silver surface of the lake, gardens she had designed by hand during late-night hours, planned in pencil on plain white paper, tall iron gates at the front, understated, elegant, and strong. Mounted on the gate there was a small sign, simple lettering. It read, Naomi and Carter. She had not placed a value on it publicly. But the people who moved in these worlds, the architects, the developers, the real estate journalists who came eventually to photograph the home, they all arrived at the same quiet conclusion. What Naomi had built, in every sense of the word, carried a worth of $100 million. She stood at the front gate on the morning after it was finished. Carter balanced on her hip, older now, solid and curious, a little boy who already had questions about everything. She held the key up between them. She turned it slowly in the light. She breathed. She did not call Marcus. She did not message Gerald or Evelyn. She did not reach out to Deon with photographs or explanations. That had never been what this was about. Proving something to the people who had left was not the reason she had stayed. The reason she had stayed was Carter, heavy and warm in her arms, pointing at things and asking their names. The reason was the quiet she had built around herself. Not the quiet of someone diminished, but the quiet of someone who had found her ground. The reason was this key, this gate, this garden, this morning light on the water. Eventually word reached them, the way word always finds its way to people who assumed you would not make it. A mutual friend mentioned something at a gathering. Then a photograph appeared somewhere, online, and someone who knew them all saw it and shared it. Then Deon sent her a message one afternoon, after more than 2 years of complete silence. It was short and a little awkward, as such messages always are. Heard things are going really well for you. That's great, Naomi, truly. She read it. She put her phone in her pocket. She stood at her kitchen window and looked out at the water for a while. She thought about what the past 3 years had actually cost. The nights when Carter was sick and she had no one to call to come sit with her. The mornings when she had to be on a call at 7 and Carter had been awake since 4. The times she had sat on the floor of a half-furnished rental house after a long day and had quietly wondered if she had been foolish to stay, to try to believe. She had looked at those moments honestly, and she had stayed anyway. She thought about Evelyn's message, the one from the very beginning. You won't make it on your own in this city. She looked through her tall windows at the lake, shining now in the late morning, at the gardens beginning to fill with color, at Carter's small rubber boots lined up by the back door, waiting for him. Then she picked him up, settled him on her hip, and went to make him breakfast. She hummed something soft while she worked. Carter pressed his cheek against her shoulder and watched her move. The past had shaped her. She did not wish it away. But it did not own her, not a single hour of it. The people who had turned away had only made more room for the life she was always meant to walk into, and she had walked into it, one quiet, deliberate, unwitnessed day at a time. She had built every single piece of it herself. Some people will leave you with nothing, certain you will stay broken. They will not always be there to see how wrong they were. But you will be. You will be right there,